Wendy's Baconator is the ultimate bacon cheeseburger that puts all other cheeseburgers to cheeseburger shame. And now we're bringing that same big bacon energy to shake up and wake up your breakfast with the Breakfast Baconator. Stacked with the fresh cracked egg, sausage, cheese, and bacon. And right now, you can get a free Breakfast Baconator with purchase in the Wendy's app. So get to Wendy's and always be baconating. We got you.
Offer available at participating U.S. Wendy's for a limited time during breakfast hours only. Offer must be redeemed via the app. Account registration required.
Hello and welcome to the Quick News Daily Podcast, where I give you the facts first, no clickbait stories, just real news that matters to real people. It is Tuesday, January 12th. Thanks for joining me back here again. As I mentioned yesterday, we do have a packed show to get to. Again, yesterday was more about the fallout from the Capitol Insurrection last week, and then starting a little bit on impeachment, and today we'll get into more of the COVID vaccine news about new mutations, and any new information on impeachment, the deuce. Impeachment, Part 2. What are we going to brand this thing as? So, to try to help things along so it doesn't go as long as yesterday, let's jump right into it and get caught up. Starting with those vaccines, the World Health Organization now says that you can increase the time between the first and second doses of the vaccine to up to 6 weeks. Right now, it's 3 weeks and 4 weeks between shots, depending on Pfizer versus Moderna. This is supposed to help countries where the virus is out of control, the vaccine supply is already an issue, so basically they can do the UK thing where they try to get more people the first dose, instead of getting a smaller group of people fully immunized. Some good news about the vaccines and the mutations. In a small study, the Pfizer vaccine has been shown to work against 2 new variants of the virus. And oh yeah, by the way, there are like 2 mutated strains, officially, maybe 3. The first one is the one we all recognize, the one we know and love. It's the UK variant, which is now officially called B1.1.7. And now we have a new player from South Africa. This mutation is known as B.1.351, and it shares the same major mutation as the UK variant, and that has to do with the spike protein. Again, take a drink whenever you hear me say spike protein. So for this test, they took blood samples from 20 people who had already gotten the vaccine, put the blood in some lab dishes, then put the virus in the lab dishes with it to see what would happen. As it turns out, antibodies in all of the blood samples defeated the virus. I say this is an unofficial sort of trial because, number 1, it hasn't yet been reviewed by external sources, and 2, this is just a me thing, but it seems like a small trial. 20 people? But 20 for 20, that ain't bad. It'd be more concerning if it was like 10 out of 20. So how can it be so effective? There are a lot of reasons that it works so well, but mainly the vaccine helps our immune systems create antibodies against multiple parts of the spike protein. Drink. It's not like we only have a key to unlock our car. Our key unlocks the car, and then it starts the car. Just as a quick analogy. However, they did only test antibodies against this one mutation. The problem is that the South African version has another major mutation on it. Again, it's also on the spike protein, so drink. It's on the part called the receptor binding domain, which helps the virus attach to ACE2. ACE2, ACE2, is a protein that's on the surface of a lot of our cells, so this protein must also like the protein on the spike of the virus, so that's why they attach? Bio majors, help me out here. It looks like our bodies don't recognize this mutation as well, so it decreases how effective the vaccine is, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't help. It just lowers the effectiveness, it doesn't make it completely useless. I'm guessing it's sort of like the flu shot, where even if the flu shot doesn't prevent you from getting it and you still get it, you're supposed to get less sick than you would if you didn't have the vaccine. I mean, it makes sense if you just kind of think about it at a surface level, like it's already started studying for part of the exam, but not the full exam, if it were a student in this case. And just to circle back for a second here, the reason that the first mutation, the one that the UK and the South African version share, the reason it's more transmissible is that it's also more effective at attaching to these ACE2 receptors. ACE2 levels are increased when we take NSAIDs like ibuprofen, but there isn't clear evidence that using Tylenol, which doesn't increase ACE2 levels, using that instead of ibuprofen, it doesn't show that it improves your chances at recovery, at least conclusively. I guess, if possible, take Tylenol instead if you can, but if it really impacts your health negatively, then stick to the ibuprofen. To wrap this whole story up about the effectiveness against the mutations, even if it does eventually mutate to the point that they need to adjust the vaccine, it's actually easier in this type of vaccine that uses the mRNA. We talked a little bit about that last week, I think, but it actually uses genetic code from the virus, so all they have to do is swap that out for the latest version, and then it's good to go. Kind of like an iOS update, an update to your app. That's all they'd have to do. Now, to just boost Moderna's ego just a little bit more, I'll talk about this really quickly. At an event organized by a financial services group, Moderna CEO Stéphane Bancel said last Thursday that, quote, "The antibody decay generated by the vaccine in humans goes down very slowly. We believe that there will be protection for a couple of years," end quote. He went on to say that it's basically a fact at this point that the thing we were worried about this spring, that we could get reinfected quickly and or that the vaccine would only work for a month or two, is not going to happen. Lastly, Bancel said that Moderna is very close to proving that their vaccine can be effective against the new mutation. Keyword there is proving, but he didn't give any more details. Again, this was during an event, so maybe he's sort of promoting the brand. You would hope not, but it always kind of seeps in there. At the same time though, confidence and goodwill towards your company have never been higher if you're Moderna. So unless he's buying into their own hype, a little bit too much, sort of an Icarus situation, I don't think he'd risk that reputation by making wild claims that he couldn't prove. But the devil on the shoulder says big pharma, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess, until you see some proof. Let's take 1 second here to go back to what happened last Wednesday. So I saw this story before everything happened last week at the Capitol, so that's when it was from. I thought it was an important story then, but now it's absolutely crucial. The website Popular Info did some digging into who donates to all of these Republicans that were pushing to overturn the election and make Donald Trump our dictator. I'm sorry to say that you might know every single one of these companies. Personally, I got stumped by one of them. But as someone who's going to school to be an accountant, this list especially horrified me. The 20 biggest donors over the last 6 years, and this is just to Republicans in Congress who tried to overturn the results. Not even all Republicans, who they probably donate even more to. This is in order from those who donated the largest amount, in dollars, to those who donated the least. Number 20 is Boston Scientific. 19, Anheuser-Busch. 18, Wells Fargo. Great company, of course. Spotless history. Capital One at 17. 16, Bank of America. 15, Lowe's. 14, Microsoft. 13, Amazon. 12, Google. 11, Pfizer. 10, Walmart. 9, KPMG. 8, Delta. 7, United Health Group. 6, PricewaterhouseCoopers. 5, Ernst & Young. 4, Deloitte. 3, UPS. 2, Comcast. And number 1, AT&T. So yeah, considering that numbers 4, 5, 6, and 9 are all companies that primarily do public accounting, you can see why that leaves a bad taste in my mouth for them. AT&T donated the most amount of money at $2,053,000 donated, and they donated to the most number of seditious members. They spread that seditious love around to 130 of these traders. And number 20, Boston Scientific donated the least of the group at $273,500. That was the one I've heard of just once or twice, but it turns out that their company makes medical devices. Anheuser-Busch donated to the fewest number of members at 38. Going company by company for the top donors and starting with AT&T, AT&T has donated to 11 of the 13 senators who had originally pledged to object to the certification of the results. Over the last 6 years, the company has donated $136,500 to those 11 senators. They've donated $12,000 over the past 6 years to Jim Jordan alone, who's one of the worst Republicans in Congress, but also just got awarded the Medal of Freedom yesterday. Popular Info reached out to AT&T, who said they issued a statement as part of the Business Roundtable, and that statement basically said that nobody has found any fraud, Congress can't overturn the results that the state certified and the Electoral College voted on, and that they're opposed to any efforts to do so. That being said, they did not say whether they continue to support these congressmen and women, which is pretty much an answer in itself, don't you think? Amazon donated $21,500 to 7 senators who originally said that they'd oppose the certification of the results. And they gave House Rep. Matt Gaetz, one of the Trumpiest House members, $2,500 over the last 6 years. They didn't respond to a request for comment from Popular Info, but they did also sign on to that Business Roundtable statement. Microsoft was early to the game in terms of recognizing reality. President Brad Smith congratulated Joe and Kamala when the race was officially called on November 7th. They've also said that the attempt to overturn all these votes is, quote, counter to the essential tenets of our democracy, end quote. Despite that, they've donated $598,000 to 83 of these seditious members of Congress. Also, when Popular Info asked if they'd still donate to these congresspeople, Microsoft responded by saying, "We weigh a number of factors in making political contribution decisions, and will consider this and other issues in making future contribution decisions." Again, kind of an answer in itself. I mean, would it kill these guys to just say no? It's literally the easiest question. Do you believe in democracy and the Constitution? Both Pfizer and Boston Scientific gave similar answers about evaluating their choices in the future, which is kind of a load of crap. They're going to keep donating to people who they think will give them more tax cuts, tax incentives, etc. And they don't really care about democracy as long as our problems don't hurt their bottom line. At least it seems that way. So what can we do about it? Frankly, we just have to make our voices heard and annoy them so much that they cut ties with these seditious lawmakers. You can make some noise on social media by tagging them in a Facebook post, tweeting at them directly on Twitter, trying to DM them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like a private message, or the classic, a strongly worded email. Basically, these companies can either be like MyPillow and their CEO, Mike Lindell, who continues to support Trump, while also just flat out lying by saying that the Capitol violence last week was caused by Antifa. I guess I'd just suggest another brand of pillow if I were you. On the flip side, companies can be like Dow Chemicals, who told Popular Info the other day, the same person who wrote this article, that it will not donate to any member of Congress that objected to the certification of the vote. However, in a new statement, they almost completely backed down by saying the suspension of the donations lasts for the member's current term in office. If they're re-elected, man, who knows? Maybe they'll get more money. You clearly have the money to have a backbone. Just have a backbone. Stand up for once. Back to COVID here for a second, especially if you're in Los Angeles or anywhere in California mainly. There's some new guidance from the FDA that says that COVID tests that are made by Curative, which is a new startup company, has a risk of producing false results, and particularly false negative results. Now, of course, every type of test does have this risk, but it seems like it would be just an increased frequency in this type of test if the FDA has to come out and say this. Now they're saying that this test should only be used on, quote, symptomatic individuals within 14 days of COVID-19 symptom onset. And what's different about this one is that it isn't a nasal swab, it's a self-administered oral swab. So it says here you just swab around your gums, cheeks, and tongue, and then that's used to determine if you have COVID or not. The problem is that this is one of the biggest, or at least they have their tests in some of the biggest areas in the US. They're in major cities like Chicago, San Francisco, Houston, Atlanta, Miami, and Seattle. For LA specifically, they're the ones who provide the tests for Dodger Stadium testing, which has thousands of tests a day. So if those are false negatives or just false in any way, obviously that impacts a lot of people. They also hold a contract to perform testing in military treatment facilities and on members of Congress. Yikes. In their defense, it was never supposed to be used on asymptomatic people, and it sounds like it was maybe LA Mayor Eric Garcetti who was pushing that. But, they did fully disclose that in their trial they only studied people who had symptoms. Let's end with some good news about another vaccine, the flu shot. These are just some crazy numbers here. In New York City, there have been just 476 confirmed flu cases so far this year. For a reference point, this exact same time last year, there were 13,350 cases. Doing some quick math here, that means that they've only had about 4% of the flu cases that they had last year. Like the Bronx, 3,808 flu cases last year at this time. This year, 60. Brooklyn, about 4,300. This year, 144. It's just like that in pretty much all of the boroughs, which is really incredible. Now, this is largely due to masks, I presume, social distancing, staying inside more, but also you have to think that people probably aren't going out and getting tested for the flu or going to the ER or walk-in or something like that. So I don't want to pull a Donald Trump here and say that just because they're not testing as much, maybe, and they're having fewer cases as a result. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to give a couple explanations for this, but hey, good news anyway. And if you needed any more encouragement to get your flu shot, take a listen to this. According to a newer study back in October, I guess not newer then, but the flu vaccine appears to significantly reduce a COVID-19 patient's risk for ending up in the ICU. This is based on analyzing 2,000 COVID-19 patients' health records. All of these people tested positive for COVID at some point between this past March and August. Just over 10% of the patients had previously been vaccinated for the flu. COVID patients who had not received a flu vaccine within the last year were 2.4 times more likely to be hospitalized and 3.3 times more likely to be transferred to the ICU. They said that they don't know for sure why the flu vaccine would have this beneficial side effect, but the study's author suggests that the flu vaccine might increase natural killer cell activity, a type of immune cell that has been shown to target cancer in cells infected by viruses. So basically, it starts to exercise your immune system before it's really attacked, like before you get attacked for real from COVID. So it's already kind of moving. It's like how you stretch out and then you feel a little bit better after you stretch out. You feel a little more limber, and that's what your immune system's doing here. Another doctor who is the director of pulmonary and critical care at a hospital in New York City says, quote, "Flu shots can stimulate specific antiviral immunity to the flu, as well as nonspecific innate immunity, and it's the latter effect that might end up conferring added protection against the most serious outcomes among patients. It also helps you with COVID because you really don't want to be fighting the flu and COVID at the same time, so if you get the flu shot, you're less likely to be suffering from the flu." And the final reason that they say it probably helps people fighting off the coronavirus, or maybe not getting it as bad, is that if you get your flu shot, you're more likely to take preventative measures, practice social distancing, wearing masks, that sort of a thing. You're probably more likely to do that in general, so that'll help you alone on its own with COVID. Alright, I think that's where I'm going to cut it off here for today, for the news at least. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, make sure to stay safe out there, both in state capital locations where more violence could be happening, and just in general against the coronavirus, now that we might have 2 to 3 mutations floating around out there. So really, there's no better time than the present to be careful, to take preventative measures, and to just be safe in general. I should say there won't be a new episode tomorrow, kind of a busy day on my front, so check back here on Thursday for a new episode of Quick News Daily. Alright, stay safe folks. Talk to you then.
Wendy's Baconator is the ultimate bacon cheeseburger that puts all other cheeseburgers to cheeseburger shame. And now we're bringing that same big bacon energy to shake up and wake up your breakfast with the Breakfast Baconator. Stacked with the fresh cracked egg, sausage, cheese, and bacon. And right now, you can get a free Breakfast Baconator with purchase in the Wendy's app. So get to Wendy's and always be baconating. We got you.
Offer available at participating U.S. Wendy's for a limited time during breakfast hours only. Offer must be redeemed via the app. Account registration required.
Wendy's Baconator is the ultimate bacon cheeseburger that puts all other cheeseburgers to cheeseburger shame. And now we're bringing that same big bacon energy to shake up and wake up your breakfast with the Breakfast Baconator. Stacked with the fresh cracked egg, sausage, cheese, and bacon. And right now, you can get a free Breakfast Baconator with purchase in the Wendy's app. So get to Wendy's and always be baconating. We got you.
Offer available at participating U.S. Wendy's for a limited time during breakfast hours only. Offer must be redeemed via the app. Account registration required.